This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Fire Commission meeting for Tuesday, October 25th, 2022 to order. I'd like to ask for everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like you to please continue to stand for a moment of silence for Bristol Police Officers Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte and Sergeant Alex Hannes, as well as Police Officer Alec Inurato. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Before we get into the agenda, I'd like to welcome our newest member to our Board of Fire Commission, Ms. Pat Brown. Pat comes to us to fill the vacant position of previous Commissioner Joseph Capucci, and we welcome Pat to our commission. My expectation is you will bring a great deal of skill and expertise and background that will be able to help this commission as we move forward. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this commission.
I'm very happy to be part of this team.
Very good, thank you. I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes from the regular Board of Fire Commission meeting held on September 27, 2022.
So moved.
Are there any questions on the minutes? All in favor? So moved.
Sure.
The chief's report.
But
Chairman, thank you.
I wasn't here, so do I vote
No.
on the minutes?
No,
So
you don't.
I didn't think
No.
so.
Just want to acknowledge Commissioner Brown being here, and I know Commissioner Mulligan is not here tonight, but I'm pretty sure this is the first majority female commission in the history of North Haven. And I could be wrong with that. Somebody's welcome to fact check me, but either way, it's really, really awesome. Thank you, and welcome for being.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Actually, Pat Brown and I were speaking about that when I first learned that Pat was selected for the commission.
Yeah.
I said, I'm almost sure we're the only
Yeah.
commission that
I'm not
is-
sure where those records exist.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but
Sure.
it's a lovely thing to do.
Well, welcome again.
Yes.
Chief's report. So I'll start off with alarms as we normally do. These alarms, the year to date, we are at 4,220. Year to date at this time last year, we are at 3,821. The difference of almost 400 alarms. Since our last regular Board of Fire Commission meeting on September 27th, these numbers are going to reflect anything since that last meeting. So we've had 10 incident responses to the highway, a little low, but we expect that to start picking up as the winter weather arrives. 113 incidents in which just the ambulance responded with no assistance from the fire department. 56% of our calls were EMS related. We had approximately 366 incidents since our last meeting, 86 of which were overlapping, which accounts for 23% of our calls. That covers alarms. Regarding our budget, this time last year we were at 36.3%. As we sit here today through period 4, we are at 32.4%. Since our September meeting, we've collected $16,744. It brings us this fiscal year to a total of $214,000, just over $214,000. And again, this is for the fire marshal fees. EMS billing is still not taking place right now. Again, not to be too concerned with that. We have a year to go back and recover any expenses. Deputy Chief Bisson is going to be assuming those responsibilities. He's only been with us now for a few weeks, and we've started to have some meetings with some of our vendors to start to bring us up to speed in terms of catching up from where we left off. So it looks like the last bills we sent out were sometime in June, so we have plenty of time to go ahead and capture whatever's taken place from June through now. It's more important that he gets up and running on some of the OSHA required materials for training than this. And again, we're meeting with a number of parties to make sure that this is going to continue to move forward, which includes our vendor for our EMS software, as well as our vendor for the billing company itself. Otherwise, some staffing impact related to COVID right now. We do still have COVID within the fire department ranks. It is not certainly anything like it was, but we still do have members who are periodically contracting COVID. Some are even contracting COVID while on calls. Despite the best efforts of PPE at times, there is just going to be some incidents depending on a type of evolutions taking place where there may be some minimal spread of COVID with patients on scenes. The Fire Marshal's Office report, you'll notice the report that was sent out in your packet looks a little bit different than in the past. It's just because of some change in staffing and some change in reporting. You're going to find that there's going to be some differences, but the same information should be there, which includes total number of inspections for this month as well as to date. That was included in your packet. The other thing you'll start to find listed is the number of fires that we have. And so for September, you'll see a number of fires there in terms of what the cause of them was, if they're under investigation or not, and who the investigators were. That's all I have for the fire marshal's report, and I have nothing further to report.
Any questions of the chief regarding his report?
I just wanted to ask a little bit about budget line items, just to, mostly looking at the ones that are a high percentage used. So like the longevity, 85.5%. Is that
Just
some-
stipend, contractual stipend, it's paid out at a particular time in the year. It's already taken place this fiscal year. So that line is reflecting that much spent, but it should be done for the rest of the fiscal
Okay.
year.
Okay. And then the EMT, 96.
Same explanation.
Okay, so it's nothing that'll go continuously. And then the total medical supply?
Yeah, so we are finding that medical supplies right now are going substantially higher in cost. And that's obviously a line that we're gonna have to adjust for next budget. That's later on in my agenda for this evening, but I'm already preparing for next year's budget, and the EMS line is undoubtedly something that will need to go up. That's also for a variety of, it's not just EMS supplies itself, it's the software, it's some of the equipment that we're using on the apparatus specific to EMS.
Okay. There was, and the paramedic? Total paramedic
Again, that's another stipend line as well.
stipend, so that one's not gonna, okay, it's finished.
What line was that, Jen? Just,
Do you want a page number? Page 5, it's the fourth one down. This one looks like it has a large encumbrance.
oh, that is, yeah, that's the same thing. That is semi-annual bill that's paid out to a vendor for quality management for EMS. So that they shouldn't have much more drawn from it either.
Okay.
Chief, regarding the number of fires that occurred in September, is that on an average, an average number, or?
I know you've never seen
Yeah.
it reported this
Yeah,
way before.
correct.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
pretty average. In fact, it's probably that and then some on a month-to-month basis.
That was surprising.
Yep. And I think that's why I'm gonna like reflecting it in this way,
Yeah.
is we're gonna be able to put this together over the course of an entire year. And it will give you a really good picture in terms of the cause of the fire, whether or not it was accidental arson, whether or not it was a natural cause. in terms of what type of fire it was, what type of establishment, commercial, residential, if it was a car. And then further down, you can see where we can tell you if it was occupied or not as well. So I think this is gonna become quite valuable to the commission as we start moving forward.
Can I go back to I have one last budget line item. The one for total technology, it's on page 6,
Yep, that's
99%.
a line that is predominantly because of the purchasing of some of that software that we talked about, and that's already been paid for the year.
Okay,
And the problem with this particular year was we had to purchase the new software and the old software for this particular fiscal year because I don't want to make a hard cutoff and go to the new software without really getting a few months in it and knowing that like reports like this that we're populating for you are going to be accurate.
Right.
So we're simultaneously running the old and the new for this next year. We won't be running it that long, but I had to pay for it for that
Right,
long.
right.
So that we can make sure that transition process is good. We're going from a program that we've used exclusively for 20, 25 years to something entirely new. It's not some, and there's a lot of data in that old program that I
Right,
want to
you
make
don't
sure
wanna
carries
lose.
over.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
important for us to make sure that seamless transition.
One thing on the COVID, just, you know, protocols have changed so much over the last couple of years. So if someone has an exposure, where are we with the whole, having a quarantine and things like that?
So some recent town policies that have been issued. I am no longer doing any kind of quarantine tracking like I was for a
Okay.
good period of time. As of the last 6 to 8 weeks, that is falling entirely on the town.
Okay.
So HR is notified in the town, and HR takes care of any relevant contact tracing. I'm
Okay.
out of it now.
And Chief, do we have firefighters who are out on COVID?
At the moment, no, but since our last meeting, we've had a couple.
Okay. And, yeah, it's, between the CDC requirements and things have changed dramatically as to quarantining or not quarantining or and that kind of thing. If you have symptoms, no symptoms, it's kind of interesting.
If you're vaccinated, not vaccinated,
Correct.
booster, not booster.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
it's a
right.
pretty confusing bag of tricks. Any other questions of the chief regarding his report? Yes, Pat?
I have two. The water budget, which is 4,000, is that for the buildings?
Yes.
And how are the trucks covered? What service provides water in the trucks?
To the water that goes in the tanks, we just
Yeah.
filled off hydrants. There's not a fee for that.
Oh, there isn't, okay.
No,
And
the
we-
water that you see in the budget is water service to the stations.
Okay,
And that's for all 4 stations.
all 4, yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it broken down probably in your budget a little bit, just so that we can keep track of what's going where. But yeah, that's what that's intended for.
I thought that was the case. Just wanted to know how the water in the vehicles, what would the
Yeah,
source
no,
was.
we're fortunate. They haven't found a way to charge us for that yet.
So with the hydrants, is the budget for repairs or replacement?
Yeah, so
Or
it's both, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily realize, is that every hydrant that you see in town is owned by the town of North Haven, and it comes out of the North Haven Fire Department budget for repairs. The water use, the water servicing of it, so the pipes that are leading up to it comes out of a different line in the town budget. That's that really big, multiple $100,000 line, whatever it's up to right now. I haven't seen it in quite a while. That comes out of elsewhere in the town budget. But if a hydrant is struck in an accident or is found to not be operating, that comes out of that particular line. Now, there's in some cases, if a individual strikes a hydrant and there's a police report that goes with it, we can recover the expenses through insurance. But there are times when it is not reported, and so it's a cost that we pay. There are times that the hydrant is stolen. It's knocked from its seat. It's knocked over. Somebody comes over and steals it, and we have to pay for the hydrant, and we have no way of knowing where it went, what happened to it. So there's a lot of moving pieces to that line sometimes. Some years we're in good shape. This year we haven't even started the winter season yet, so it's really hard to tell.
Okay. And when you get reimbursement from insurance or something like that, it does not show up in that line, right? It goes into the general budget, or does it get?
So this year, and this just started the last few months because we had a few hydrants that needed to be repaired, we were able to pull the expense for the hydrant repair elsewhere in the budget. That's kind of a ebb and flow line. In other words, there's money coming out, there's money coming in, it's in a town budget somewhere. It didn't come out of this line. Up until the last few months, since I've been chief, every hydrant that's been hit comes out of this line and there's been no reimbursement shown.
Okay,
So that's been the way it has been up until just recently, and we'll see if it stays that way.
okay.
In many instances, in the wintertime, when plow drivers are plowing and hit fire hydrants or whatever it might be, there's almost never any reports. We wind up knowing after the hydrant comes out of a snow pile or whatever it might be that the hydrant is down. It becomes a pretty expensive deal. To replace a hydrant is
It depends. So there's certain hydrants in town that we can repair, and there's other hydrants in town that we can't. It's about a 50-50 split. Some of our older neighborhoods, they have what they call Matthews hydrants, and those cannot be repaired. There's no more parts available for them. They're still functioning right now, but if they were to get hit, they need to be replaced, and it's at a cost of anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a hydrant. If it's a hydrant that's a newer vintage hydrant, then it can typically be repaired, and the fee is much less.
I assume if there's significant damage to the hydrant, that there's water flow
Not
as a
always.
consequence?
That happens every once in a while. Probably happens 1 out of 100. Most of the time, the way the hydrants break is they're breaking above the water cutoff, the water valve. But we have had a couple of isolated incidents where the water does start shooting up. Yeah. Not like the movies, fortunately.
interesting. $3,000 to $5,000 for every fire hydrant. Any other questions of the chief regarding the budget or his report? Hearing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Has any commissioner or chief received any correspondence this month?
Regular correspondence to and from this department business, and then the only thing I would bring to the attention of the commission is a letter from the Wallingford Fire Department acknowledging us for their use of one of our gators during a recent event they had. We fortunate to have 2 of them in town, and as long as they're both in service, we will lend one out to a neighboring fire department for use, and that's just a letter thank you.
Excuse me,
Any commissioners received any correspondence?
no, but what is a gator?
You knew that question was coming after I said it. Small 4-wheel drive, all-terrain vehicle, essentially is what it is.
Thank you.
So I think, Pat, you and I both got, Commissioner Nozzolella, you and I both got a letter from Gary George, and he just forwarded us a letter that he wrote to the Commissioner of DOT about the issue of the fire apparatus responding to highway incidents.
Yes.
And I guess in the past, municipalities used to get a stipend for responding to highways. And he's advocating for the Department of Transportation to look into that, just because, it's an unfair burden on some towns versus some others, so.
Sure.
I think the chief addressed that last meeting.
Yeah.
When volunteers do participate on a call on the highway, there is a stipend that's paid to the town.
There is. It's new as of July 1st.
But that's just related to if you have a volunteers, right?
Correct.
He
It
made
does-
it sound like this was something that was in the
So
past.
it's not currently covering career departments. We're fortunate that we have both volunteer and career, so we fall under that bucket that allows us to send out for not all highway calls, because not all highway calls have necessarily volunteers responding to them in town, but for those that do, we're able to recover some expense. But the conversation I had with Mr. George leading up to that, because he did call to kind of just get some questions answered, he was advocating for that to be applicable to all departments, which I know a lot of fire chiefs in the state would agree with. But the other part that he brings up in there is, there's been a lot of people who have come to me and said a few things. Why are you sending fire engines to the highway to block cars? And my response is, what else can we send? You're looking at tractor trailers up on the highway in large vehicles. they're not going to be slowed down or stopped by police cars or ambulances or anything else. You need to put big trucks in a way that are visible, that have some weight behind them, that are going to protect lives. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're looking to do, right? Is protect the lives that are on the other side of that truck. And so we're sending trucks to the highway anyways for these incidents. We're not sending trucks to the highway to block traffic for anything other than the calls that we already need to be there for. So we will position the apparatus in such a way that's protecting the responders, people that were involved in the accident, the troopers, and inadvertently sometimes they do get hit by vehicles, as we've seen happen a few times here. One of the things that I've been advocating for, and I explained this to Mr. George, was there really should be DOT crash trucks on the highway. And there should be DOT crash trucks in every region of the state 24/7. There should be 3 to 4 DOT crash trucks that have those big buckets built into the back that can take an impact. That's not something that's available in the state. There's currently not a contingent of those trucks available on a very regular basis, and when they are, they're all over the state of Connecticut. In theory, in my mind, they should be available to be on scene within any municipality that has a highway within about 20 minutes. And I don't think that's a big ask. You know, our highway system isn't huge in this state, and there's not typically more than one major accident going on at a time in any geographical region. And if there is, there is, but at least we make an attempt to make it safer. But we can replace buckets of water and sand a lot faster than we can replace fire apparatus.
Right. So I forwarded this to Pat, but I can also forward it to you and anybody who wants to, you know, I mean, I think it's worth advocating for, you know, on behalf of the fire department for the state to at least consider.
There's no question. I would appreciate the comments from Mr. George. Certainly, you know, I think the ideal thing would be to have the state DOT trucks, you know, shield our firefighters.
Yep.
Unfortunately, you know, we need to be on scene so quickly, and by the time, even if it's 20 minutes, by the time our firefighters are assisting an accident victim, a tractor trailer could in fact run into our apparatus and kill our firefighters. So, you know, I think we need to respond as quickly as we possibly can to protect lives. But I absolutely think that would be something that if the state were willing to do, I think would be certainly very much appreciated by our chief and the chiefs around the state. And as far as the monies are concerned for volunteers that are responding to the state, if I remember correctly, Chief, the state created a fund, and it wasn't really a big fund, and I don't think they had the understanding as to how quickly that would be depleted. So I want to say, is it $500?
It's $500 per incident.
Per incident.
Yeah, and so there's most of the departments that are eligible for reimbursement in the state are seeking reimbursement. Some are trying to abuse it, and it's you know, no surprise there. So we're still trying to settle into exactly what the frequency of it is going to be and how often, and then what the cost is going to be. Right now, there was a number put at it. I don't know. The state legislators can probably answer better than I can. And when that runs out, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if the state's going to find money somewhere else to keep that revenue coming in and adjust it next year. We have no idea. So that's one of the reasons why, when I've explained this in the past, I said, hey, let's not count this as revenue yet, because we just don't know if it's going to be there next year. In the meantime, that revenue, the understanding that I have through the First Selectman's office is that revenue will go towards things like extrication equipment, which we're using on the highway, which have a high dollar number to them, $30,000, $40,000 a set.
Any other questions of the chief? Any other communications? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business of the department.
Old business, I have nothing to bring up unless the commissioners do.
Chief, just a question regarding Fire Prevention Month.
Yep.
It might be new business, but it's about old business now,
Sorry.
considering the month is over with. How do we, you know, my understanding is the fire marshals and the fire department has gone out to the schools and a number of businesses throughout the town. Would you give us an overview of what
Sure.
transpired?
Sure. So I did have it further down. The theme for this year is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. That is the fire prevention theme for this particular year. It'll change again next year. I'm happy to report that the North Haven school system is once again conducting the poster contest that we have not been part of in the last probably 10 years or so. I worked with the superintendent, who was very receptive to get that initiative moving forward, and happy to report that all the schools will start doing that poster contest again, which is really important. I'm happy about that. So the staff, as normal in October, have been visiting a number of sites, whether that be elderly care facilities, whether that be schools, some daycares, depending on what the staffing levels are. And we've been pushing forward that message and just getting out there, handing out some materials pertinent to whatever age group we're addressing, and trying to get the word out on fire prevention. There's also been a Halloween press release that was issued by my office recently, which corresponds with the upcoming Halloween festivities as well as Fire Prevention Month. So it's been another busy October, as Octobers normally are for us.
It was interesting to learn, and I know most of us, and those of you that are on North Haven Public TV, always think about, Fire Prevention Month, change your battery in your smoke detectors, in your fire detectors, but you need to also take them down and take a look at the expiration date on those detectors. Most of them, my understanding is, Chief, 10 years?
8 to 10 years.
10 years. And it's kind of interesting. Folks are religious about changing the batteries when you change the clock, which is nice to do. But if you don't change the detector in the appropriate time frame, you could be putting a battery in an outdated system. So the fire department has some smoke detectors. Is that
Sometimes
correct?
it depends. Yeah, it depends.
Yeah. So if not, certainly you can purchase them over at any hardware store or Home Depot. They've got them, and it's well worth the cost, as anyone who's gone through a fire will attest to. That smoke detector wakes you up out of your sleep and saves your life. So please take a look at the expiration date on those detectors. New business for the fire department, Chief.
I got a couple things for new business. I wanted to make sure the commission was aware of the 22-23 budget preparations. So received some correspondence from the finance department. We're going to have requests submitted to the finance office by December 5th. There will be a budget workshop again on a Saturday morning, January 14th, at approximately 09:15 hours. The public hearing for the budget is scheduled for April 4th, and the annual town meeting is scheduled for May 8th, followed by the referendum on May 16th. So we're going to start to prepare the fire department budget for next year, and I'll need to have my submittal to the finance department by December 5th. So my expectation is that our November fire commission meeting, as we've done in the past, provide the commissioners with, at that point, it'll probably be 80 to 90% complete with what I'm looking to accomplish in the budget for next year, and I'll allow the commissioners to ask any questions that they might have at that time.
Will we get those ahead of time in the packet?
Yeah, I'll certainly get them, well, ahead of time of the meeting.
Prior to, like the couple of days before the meeting, when we
probably.
get our regular
Yeah.
budget materials.
Yep, we can make sure that
Fire
happens. Just understand it will probably still be draft at that point, as much as I start working on the budget back like 6 months ago, obviously we'll have to figure it out between
Yep.
now and then. So that's what I have for the budget. A few things for new business. We find ourselves right now really short on fire engines. So when I say fire engines, I'm referring to the engines in the apparatus in this town that carry water. So I'm not referring to the apparatus that have ladders on top, which we have two. And I'm not referring to the rescues that are the smaller vehicles, of which we have two. The rescues and the ladders right now are in good shape. It's the engines that carry the water. This town has 7 of them. We've had 7 of them for a very, very long time, long before me. We've had 7 in service at any given time. In fact, we only have, enough station bays, station apparatus bays to accommodate 7. So we've never really been able to do a whole lot more. As you know, we have an order placed for 2 engines. That was part of an order from last fiscal year. We've been notified that that order is now going to be approximately another year out until the 2 engines arrive. That is putting a significant hindrance on our ability to rotate apparatus in and out, conduct needed repairs, needed maintenance. You know, I kind of want you to think of fire engines right now, even though they're newer, a lot more pieces on them that can break. It's kind of like cars. In the last 20 years, our cars have become much more dependent on electronics and sensors, and the fire engines are really no different. In fact, they're probably worse because there's that many more moving pieces and components and safety features built into them that, you know, we'll take an apparatus out of service sometimes because there's a light that's coming up on the dash that needs to be plugged into a diagnostic tool in order to figure out what's really causing it. And we certainly don't want to keep running it and operating it and risk any further risk to the engine itself or to the mechanics of it. So, you know, despite the fact that newer apparatus are sometimes more dependable, they're also more maintenance dependent as well. And so where I'm getting at with this is we have 2 engines that I'm waiting to come in that are not going to be here for a year, and I need to start to make preparations for that. There's a possibility that they could get pushed off even further than that. I'm hearing a number of stories from a number of Connecticut fire chiefs that are reporting the delivery dates for apparatus that keeps getting pushed further and further along because of various reasons with the supply chain. I'm even hearing a number of reports from fire chiefs that are saying that even after the order is placed and the contract is signed, that the vendors are going back to the departments and saying it'll be another $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And in many cases, the departments are saying, then we're not going to do it, and the order is canceled. I don't have any reason to believe that we're going to be asked more money, but I am anticipating further delays because it's just outside of the control of a lot of people. So that puts us at least a year from now for the 2 engines that we ordered, which is a lot further along than we had hoped for. In the meantime, the engine that was hit on the highway, which was stationed out of this station here that we're in now in the south end, was struck on a highway December of last year, has been out of service almost since, consistently since. I expected that to come back into service any day now. I was notified just in the last couple of weeks that additional parts were found to be needed, and our vendor is going to be working with the opposing insurance company to get the cost covered, and the parts will have to be ordered, and we're looking at another 3 to 4 months. So that takes another engine out of service. Then I have 2 others right now that I'm stringing along. One has issues right now with electronics, and I don't know what it's going to need yet. If it needs parts, it could be 3 to 4 months away as well. It's currently in Rocky Hill, being serviced by Detroit. Another one that was out of service for a couple of weeks and just came back, and I'm hoping it's going to stay operational, but it still has other things that are needed to be done to it. Some things with a heater coil and some things with suspension. It still can be serviced right now and utilized, but it's limping along. At the end of the day, what I'm getting at is we need fire engines in this town, and I can't wait another year for 2 more. So what I've done is I've positioned a proposal to the first selectman, and we're going to start to work through some public meetings where we are going to try to position ourselves to buy a used engine to just get us by for a while. I'm not looking to make a habit of buying used apparatus, but in light of the supply chain issues and the ordering delays and so forth, I really don't think we have much of a choice. Right now, as of yesterday and for the couple of weeks prior, we had 3.5 engines in the town of North Haven. 3.5. The reason I say one is a half is because one is a 1987 that we just don't know is going to start or not. 3.5 engines in a town this large, and you think about that's basically all of them tied up at one house fire with nothing left to go to other incidents and nothing left for staff I have to call back to take care of simultaneously occurring calls. It's not enough. We need 3 to 4 at a house fire alone just to be able to bring the equipment, the air packs, the personnel, We have 3.5 for the entire town right now.
Can I just ask, and I'm only asking this so that, if people ask, that we're clear on. So we have 7 engines, excluding the 2 that are on order, correct?
Correct.
So, and are they numbered E1 through E7?
They're not. The numbers, I'd rather share with you the age than the numbers, because the problem with the numbers is I'll reassign a number from time to time, depending on the needs of the station or what's going on. So the age of the apparatus is sometimes a better number to work with.
Okay, that was sort of what I was gonna ask,
Yeah.
if we could get.
So what I'm passing out is a manipulation of what I've shown for the last several years during budget workshops. This shows you the 7 engines that we have in our fleet. You can look at the number there, but again, just know that next year that number may change, and so we always have that right to do so. What I want you to look at when you look at this is what I've circled there, that as it stands right now, we have 3 engines that they're old. One's 23, one's 29, one is 36 years old. We've been in this situation for a long time. We've advocated for replacing fire apparatus for a number of years. We're thankful that we finally have 2 on order, but we've taken a long time to get to that point, and now we're at the mercy of the supply chain issues and trying to get them put into our fleet. So the ones that are crossed out were the ones that were out of service as of yesterday, and how long we expect them to be down for. What this is doing is it's just creating a significant impact, because as it stands right now, there's normally 2 engines out of the Mono East station, one for the career side, which the paramedic and 2 other firefighters are on, and then one for the volunteers. There hasn't been an engine down here for the volunteers for a couple of weeks. Think about what that's doing to our efforts to retain volunteers when we just don't have an engine for them.
So when they come,
They don't come. They're
They
not
don't come.
dispatched. There's nothing to dispatch them to.
okay,
The dispatch is built based on apparatus that are in service. That's what the CAD system does. The CAD looks to say, these engines or this apparatus is in service. The computer will look to tone out. There's nothing in service here, so they're not being dispatched to anything.
okay.
Chief, the engine that was at Monowese that you and I took a ride on,
That's engine 3, the 36-year-old engine.
okay. I thought I took my life in my hands when I was riding on that. I couldn't even imagine our firefighters operating that engine. It was that frightening. The chief and I took a ride after a meeting, and I think that was his whole intention, was
To scare you?
to scare the dickens out of me, and it happened. The windows didn't close. The exhaust was coming up through the engine into the cab.
We were yelling at each other to communicate.
Couldn't hear each other, and the seat I was sitting on was rocking back and forth because it wasn't anchored. The seatbelt didn't work. I mean, it's just unconscionable that we have that apparatus in service and our firefighters are responding to that. So I think we've been asking for a number of years, and I'm thankful that the town did approve the 2 engines that are on order now. We have been asking for numerous years to have this happen, and there were people on the Board of Finance and in the audience that would suggest that we wait another year or wait another year. Well, maybe you don't need it now. And here we are now in this sad state of affairs as far as our apparatus is concerned. It's just frightening as hell that we are in this situation.
This has been a long time coming. I mean, the only thing I want you to pay attention to as well is that purchase duration, which I've talked about at a number of workshop meetings. We've gone multiple times more than 5 years without buying fire engines. I mean, that's the issues that we're in right now aren't necessarily because of the current administration or the current commission. This has been building up for a very, very long time. We can't go 6 to 8 years without buying a fire engine. That just kicks the can further down the line.
And the other thing that it does is when we buy 2 apparatus at the same time, it both age at the same time.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna, when we're down hopefully they last 10, 15 years, whatever it happens to be. They're both gonna be ready to be traded in or replaced. And it's a huge expense. We're looking at $750,000
Each.
each.
And just from a budgetary perspective, as they get pushed off, the new ones that are coming in, are we paying anything on them before? So we don't pay anything until we receive them.
Correct.
And
We have a down payment at this point to secure the purchase, the contract, but that's it.
that's it. So when you've talked with the first selectman and you're talking about town meetings, are we looking at one, or should we be looking at the ages? If you get one used apparatus or engine, that you're going to be hopefully taking out this unreliable 36-year-old one. But then does that really solve our problem? Or does it make sense to talk about, like, what's the difference in cost between used versus new?
So a new right now, and again, this is part of the issue that we run into, is a new demo, which we've purchased before, and it was something that we struggled to keep in service because it didn't meet the needs of our town. A new demo is between $625 and $650. I'm advocating to purchase something used for no more than $200.
Okay.
But what type of warranty is on the used engine?
There is none. There might be at the most 30 days, but I don't even anticipate there would be that.
What about a new one?
A new, there would be, something specific to the transmission, to the engine, there'd be a year to 3 years, depending on the component you're talking about.
Okay, 0 on used engine.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like used is what the first selectman is most comfortable with right now. And so just to kind of finish bringing you up to speed in terms of where my head is, this is a big problem for us right now. So my immediate goal is to, and we're pursuing that now. We had paperwork come back today, and I expect to be executed tomorrow. For the last week, we've been working on executing a lease to lease an engine for a period of time to at least get us operational again. That lease will stay in place until such time that we take delivery of whatever we purchase used. If we have to extend that lease at that point, depending on where we are, we can revisit it at that time. No matter what we do right now, we have a level of risk. But the real and significant level of risk that is palpable is we have 3.5 engines right now.
Well, and I guess, when you're talking about purchasing a used, to help with the issue with Mono East, what happens at West Ridge when this apparatus doesn't start? They don't get out either. So you've
Right now,
you have two volunteer companies that aren't necessarily getting out. So this is why I'm questioning, I understand people's concern about, what's the cost of leasing or asking to purchase 2 used engines, but I think we have to recommend what we think is needed, and then, because I think unless we ask for it, if we don't ask for it, we're not going to get it. And you might only get half of what you're asking for, but at least you're laying out the arguments for the fact that we have 2 volunteer companies where
One's not being dispatched
one's
at
not
all,
at all,
and
and the
one
other
is-
one,
Right.
if it gets dispatched and it doesn't start, they are not going anywhere either.
I'm totally in agreement with your thought process. My question to you, Chief, is how available are used apparatus?
They're not.
It's like buying used cars today. You just can't get them, and the ones that you get are skyrocketing high. Obviously, we need a specific type of apparatus that would be appropriate for our town within a $200,000 budget. And ideally, we need 2. And I think that's exactly where you're going. So, and again, I guess the question is, And I'm assuming it's a national search to look for a used apparatus
Pretty much.
in that financial realm?
It is. It's been taking place for about a week. We've been pushing this initiative for about the last week when we started to see these all dropping out on us. And let's face it, we forecasted this happening for a long time. We've been talking about this for quite some time, about how fragile our fleet was. And I can't even begin to tell you the list of things that are waiting to be repaired on the ones that are in service, because if I take them out of service, we're really in worse
Right.
trouble. The search right now is for something used in the East Coast. I'll say the East Coast, that goes quite far out. But there's not a lot out there. And there's not a lot out there because the crisis that we find ourselves in for supply chain is everywhere in the nation. And let's be honest, if we had a used engine, if we had an engine right now that was pretty good in our fleet, would we want to be selling it? We'd probably say no, let's hold on to it, like most fire departments out there are doing. So there's not what used to be somewhat of a reliable market isn't so reliable right now. In the last week, I've been provided with two options. One I'm not pursuing, and one it looks like the earliest will be available would be the end of December, which seems like far away, but it's 2 months. So I don't know that there would be two out there anytime really soon, and I don't know what the funding looks like. This. My goal is within the means that we have right now, place something in service as a lease, and even that's not new, but we don't have a commitment to repair or anything like that if it breaks. And then while we're securing that lease and keeping it in service, work to buy something used, try to get the engine back from the highway in the next few months that was hit, try to start filtering some of these things through. And I'll be completely honest with you, the other piece that would help in managing the fleet is a mechanic to do this. A mechanic that I can send out and say, hey, go look at this. A mechanic that I could take all of these different apparatus that have these pressing issues and say, prioritize this for me. Let me know what it needs. Tell me. We have nobody who oversees this who speaks the same language as the shops that are doing all of our repairs. That's a compounding issue with this as well.
And that's a subject that we've been talking about for a number of years, bringing on board our own full-time mechanic and they need to be certified for the repair apparatus for a variety of different certifications. We've been trying to do that, and I'm sure in this budget workshop we're going to include a mechanic once again in the budget. Chief, a question regarding leasing the apparatus. You're going to lease another a pumper, and it's not new.
No.
Do you know the year of that?
I believe it's a 2006.
Okay. Is there an opportunity for us to lease to buy that one?
We could, but it doesn't currently meet our long-term needs.
Okay.
It meets some short-term needs, but not our long-term needs.
Okay. Okay.
My intention with the purchase of something used is to fix an immediate problem, but to try to build some depth in our fleet moving forward as well.
Sure.
I said before that we have room for 7 apparatus. Really, at any given time, all we're ever going to have to house is 7 apparatus, because naturally, one of them is always out for repair somewhere. If we get to a point where we actually have all 8 in service, we'll make room for it somewhere. We'll move some things around. It won't be comfortable, but it'll work. But typically, with a fleet of 7, one of them is always out for something.
What's the year of the used apparatus that you are seriously looking at?
I believe that is a 2007 or 2008. It just came through my desk today, and it's still in the process of kind of digging through it. The year is only one piece of it. You got to look at the engine hours, the mileage, particularly the engine hours in these. It may not have a lot of mileage on it, but it may have been in pump for a very long time.
If, with the lease, the options of leasing, you said you have one right now. How difficult is it to get an engine to lease?
Didn't seem like it was too bad.
Okay.
Um,
So if we found ourselves in the position of we thought we really needed to, we could look into the option of 2 leases.
Yeah, I mean, if tomorrow, God forbid, something happens catastrophic to something else in our fleet, or we get another one that's hit, I think leasing is probably something we can pursue almost immediately.
Okay.
The wild card is getting that engine that was hit on the highway back in a 2-month period of time, or 3 months, as, you know, and we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know when the parts will be available. I mean, that engine has been out for,
Since December,
yep,
almost a year.
almost a year. And it was struck on the highway, no fault of ours. And here we are, as a town without a very important piece of apparatus. Well, so what's the time frame as far as, so this needs to go to a town meeting, correct?
Yeah, so the first selectman's office is working on all the details for where to pull the money from, the formalities of how to do it, and I'm told I'll have to go to a couple of meetings to advocate. And to be honest with you, I'm gonna be handing out something very similar to what you have here, because I think this pretty much says it all. And then some elaboration in terms of how we got where we are today. But I would expect that between now and our next meeting, there will be some movement on it, for sure.
And then we know geographically where this used engine is coming from? I know you said East Coast.
The usual, I mean, the one that we looked at today and we're asking the vendor to kind of pursue further is in Ohio. But that, it may change.
Yeah, sure. Assuming, you know, I mean, you're asking them to look at it, somebody might buy it tonight,
Right.
right? Any other questions regarding this issue?
What happens to the 36-year-old engine?
Well, that usually gets, we use a website called GovDeals or GovBids, and usually all of our apparatus typically gets put there. We do not get that revenue, that goes somewhere else, but you're not talking a lot of money. You're talking a few $1,000s for these. By the time we go to get rid of apparatus, naturally in this department, they're well over 25 years old. There's not a significant value to them anymore. To be honest with you, farmers end up grabbing them, somebody ends up grabbing them. You know, and something to keep in mind is this 36-year-old engine. You can make the argument that we should have perhaps filtered that out a few years ago and we took delivery of another one. But believe it or not, the 36-year-old engine was in better shape than another one that was about 33 years old. It's not always just age. There's other factors that go into it as well. And the 36-year-old engine also allowed me to remain competitive with some of the bids, some of the grants we were putting in for 3 consecutive years that unfortunately we weren't successful with, as most departments are not, but it was, it served its purpose and it did so well.
Any other questions on this subject? Chief, any other new business?
No other new business. No.
Anything good for the good of the fire department?
Good to the department. The only thing I wanted to bring to the commission's attention is there is a town resident that is working very diligently with one of our captains, Captain Jeff O'Beer, on transcribing logbooks. So for well over 50 years now, there's been a logbook that's kept at fire headquarters that is many notations are made of. A long time ago, it was everything, alarms, who was there, everything. That's lightened up quite a bit now with some computer software that we're keeping track of now. But those logbooks are being converted over into digital and being available for generations to come. And so there's a resident and a captain who's working pretty hard on that. It's quite a lift, as well as some photographs. And so those will all be available in the library very shortly.
Well, we certainly like to thank that resident for his or her time and effort in transcribing those. I'd like to say, I'd like to thank the fire department and certainly our North Haven Police Department for their efforts in the procession that took place last week for the 2 police officers that were killed. I think it was a tremendous outpouring. I was proud of our department. Our apparatus, and we're out there, and our personnel. And again, I was very proud to see the North Haven Fire Department out there supporting their fellow and female officers in blue. Between the North Haven Police Department and Fire Department, I commend each and every one of them for doing the things that they did, and thank you, Chief, for assisting in the coordination of that, as well as the police chief. So I appreciate that very much. We have no one here for public comment, so I will ask for a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So moved. I'd like to resume the Tuesday, October 25th, 2022 North Haven Fire Commission meeting. Commissioner Cardwell, you have a motion to make, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to retire the statewide entry-level testing paramedic section of the consortium list effective immediately.
Do I hear a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Is there any further business coming before this commission? Hearing none, I'd like to announce that the next regularly scheduled meeting for the North Haven Fire Commission will be November 22nd, 2022, at 6 p.m. at the Montauk Company 2 Fire Station, 282 Quinnipiac Avenue. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you very much, and Pat, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I think we
Meeting's
need,
adjourned.
don't we need a second and a vote
We did.
on the adjournment?
I'll second.
I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry.
Really?
Oh, yes, please.
All in favor, aye.
This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.